The Secret Life of Ashley Brown. Ash. Chapter 1. Dublin 2010. South of Swords there is a park called Ward River Valley. The river rises near Kilbride and flows through Brackenstown, running along the banks of the Swords Park. On hot days, the water is cool, not cold and never warm. A dirt path that resembles something from a Mark Twain book cuts between the giant trees. I often envision Tom Sawyer and his pals walking in front of me as they head toward the same spot, the part that curves into a pool. The branches of the trees that mark one side dip into the water for a drink. Individual branches, fresh and green, their eyes gazing at their own reflection. The reflection is like something from a Van Gogh painting. It is here my feet stand still. The water invading the bank washes over them. I am invisible to the fish swimming beneath the surface. Every day for the past 6 months I show up here. The morning is crisp. The sun has slipped behind the clouds like a child hiding under her mother's apron, vanishing as if gone forever. I come to bathe my feet. Don't ask me why I do that. When I am here, I go back to those, once upon a time, places. We have them, you know, the places in our minds that bring us a bath. For many, they are the best of times, for others, the worst. People say you are only born once. I was born a second time when that bullet missed my head, remembering the coughing yells from a woman who had run toward me. She lodged her feet to the ground in such a resolute way you'd think they grew there. Run, me dear, run for your life. Run I did. I have a few secrets. If I'm to tell anyone my deepest ones, I'd best tell them to God. On the bank this morning, I decide I might as well disclose them to you. I dried my feet, put on my shoes and walked back to the car. Opening the door, I turned the key, let the handbrake down and drove home. Christmas was a week away and the tree was still in the box. Rushing around, my mind went on autopilot. Gosh, I thought, Mum and Dad will be here for dinner and I haven't a window washed. I need to get the shopping. Jumping back into the car, I took my phone from my pocket, placed it in the holder and drove to the shops. It rang. I answered the call. Hi Ma'am. Ashley dear, your father and I will be late tonight as he has one of his meetings. Okay, ma'am, I said, turning the motor around the corner. Now, don't overcook things, your father hates his food. Overcooked? Don't worry ma'am, everything is... I lied. Excellent. Oh, he wants to know if you want that cooker he saw. No ma'am, I've got one. That's old Ashley dear. Ma'am, it works. Ashley, you need a new one. Ma'am, I moaned, heading toward the M50. There will be no more said on the matter. Now back to your father and his dinner. What are you not to do? Overcook, ma'am, I got it. Excellent. Right, can't have you holding me up. I've things to do, things to do. See you later, and remember, no overcooking. The next sentence I mouthed in unison with her. Your father hates his food overcooked. This was the first Christmas for my husband and me in our new home. We had bought the house 10 months before. Gosh, where did that time go? It was an old, spacious dwelling with high ceilings and hard timber floors, not forgetting the drafts. The kitchen was unfashionable and the decorators must have put up the wallpaper somewhere between the Irish Rising and the Second World War. There had been a lot of redecorating, like plastering and painting, retiling, fixing leaky taps and replacing the scullery. After buying the property, we stayed at my parents', begging, borrowing and saving until we got the money for the refurbishments. During the renovations, I spent my time in department stores, shopping for the necessities like towels, cups, and saucers. The furniture arrived and finally the house was in order. After I got home with the shopping, I opened the box and dragged the tree into the sitting room. I pondered on all we had accomplished. The phone in my pocket rang. Answering it, the caller said, "Hello, how's it going?" "Good. I think I have that lead, the one Frankie's searching for, Pitbull." "Brilliant. Yes, but I only hope whatever I find, Frankie will be pleased." "He will, because no matter what you find, it will bring closure." "Yes, I'm sure you're right, Pitbull. Great work and thanks for everything. No problem, talk to you soon, bye. The phone went dead and I sat drinking tea, musing over what Pitbull had said. After I swallowed the tea, I got a knife, opened the box and began to put up the tree. Oh, by the way, my name is Ashley Brown. Later on, I will tell you more about myself, but for now, just let me fill you in on why a middle-class woman is taking a phone call from a man called Pitbull. The whole strange adventure kicked off some time ago. And yet, I think it started even before that. Forgive me for not making myself clear. What I'm trying to say is, this adventure thing, as I called it, got going the day that man came into our lives. I first saw Pitbull after he had been invited as a guest speaker to a college I was attending. Sue, my friend, also attended there. We had become very close since my getting back from London. She was studying visual communications while I went back to get my degree in fine arts. Pitbull was nothing like I had imagined. He was short and sturdy. His raven hair crowned a ruggedly handsome face. Yet it was his eyes that caught my attention. They were sharp and focused, well, at least, that's what I thought, wondering if the others thought the same. When I say the others, I'm referring to the women, because I don't think the men would notice those things. On that morning, Pitbull was on fire. His words had a power that could straighten every crooked road in your life. At once he set the emotional tone, which was intense and sobering, leaving some of us in tears. After listening to his testimony, I no longer questioned why anyone would call themselves Pitbull. I understood. Then he told us about his friend, an older man called Frankie. I had little choice but to pretend that these archived memories were familiar to my ears. I recalled my chronology, which was not without its dark moments. Pitbull's expository tale covered his life growing up in Finglas and Frankie's wretched experience in inner-city Dublin in the late 30s and 40s. The man's words captivated me. They were strong and full of conviction, with the redemptive power of bringing understanding, not judgment. He ended with a poignant sentence. All Frankie ever wanted was to know his father's real identity. Something stirred in me because he spoke into a desire of mine. I felt this was my gifting, having studied history. I had finished my bachelor's degree in English and history after leaving college, what now seemed like a lifetime ago. My love for antiquity came through my appreciation for fine arts and the work of the masters. Rembrandt fascinated me. He had a skillful use of dry point, resulting in an oeuvre of some 290 etchings. When I was younger, I visited Rembrandt's home, which opened to the public in 1909, 25 years before Frankie was born. Frankie's life was summed up in this way: nightmarish would be saying it mildly, sad would be saying it blandly, and victorious would be slightly understating it. My mind was inundated with questions when the class broke for lunch. As we entered the cafeteria, I found Pitbull. He stood soaking in the conversation while cautiously sipping tea. I tried to grab his attention by walking in front and sliding behind, nearly knocking the cup out of his hand, but with little effect. I wasn't the only one wanting to talk to him. Later, he nodded and approached us, shaking Sue's hand, then mine. Up close, he looked much younger than I first thought. I recalled his story, which was disturbing, a narrative that got lost in the telling of Frankie's. So I got straight down to business by asking him many questions. I saw the look on Sue's face, which said, "Here, leave it out, let the man come up for air." But I ignored the obvious facial expression, keeping my tongue moving like a tormented wasp. "She's fascinated with the subject," Sue blurted. I tried to give her a hint by a slight movement of my eyes. You know, wide open, smiling, but full of deadly venom. She ignored me. A sly pinch had little result because she continued chatting. So with no other artillery left, I calmly said, "I'll find him, I'll find Frankie's father." The way Pitbull looked at me, I felt he was the only one who heard me. That is until I turned and stared at Sue, and by the peering eyes and shaking head, I knew she heard me too. "Ash, the coffin ships that took Frankie's grandfather to the States didn't write his name in a little red book," said the interfering voice. "Oh, how do you know? Were you on that boat?" Nodding her head, she pushed her eyes to the ceiling. No, I wasn't, and you know that, but what? But, that was a long time ago, Ash. I don't think you have the time to go searching for a man who left Ireland, like, 100 years ago, Ash. Slow down, girl, that's all I'm saying. Look, I've only just met Yeez and Yeez appear to be good friends, so let's drop the tension, Pitbull said. I could see that Pitbull didn't want to get involved in a women's squabble, but his face lit up when he saw that my enthusiasm had not yet faded. What ensued next was a war of words spoken in whispering tones. He ran for a coffee. Sue ran for cover, and I ran to the ladies' room. When we emerged again, there were more handshakes, calm returned and the search began. I had just picked up a new job description. I was the go-getter, the person who might find Frankie's father, or should I say his father's real identity. However, first, I needed to uncover a Dublin I never knew existed. Chapter 2. No one told me about the historical Dublin I discovered. I approached the subject like a detective, searching the catacombs of antique bookshops and libraries, turning pages of old ledgers and works printed in the early part of the last century. To be honest, the plight of the Dublin folk left me dumbfounded. Sometimes I'd cry, but mostly, I was aghast. The blame did not lie with the people, but with a cruel, unjust system. Dublin was noted for having the worst slums in Europe. This became clear after studying various articles. I could see why reporters of that time branded it with such a horrid name. With ravishing impulse, I gazed at every photo in old books, including pictures of the Monto and the impoverished streets north and south of the river. The information I was reading was as follows. There were 7,000 tenement buildings, housing 100,000 citizens. The images crossed my mind like a slideshow. Stone and brick constructions with ragged people sandwiched between the decrepit homes and a cathedral where rich folk came out unhappy because of their unpolished shoes. In the tenement world, thousands of mothers' lives were penned in loud shouts, beatings, kisses from the grannies or scoldings from the priest. Many fathers operated the docks and spoke of work, the stevedores and the pint of ruby as they called it. A history, hidden behind ruined buildings heaped between the Rising and the Civil War. Sitting by the fire, I recalled what Frankie and Pitbull told me concerning their lives. It was a solitary moment, where I constructed every idea as if I were a writer. Why a writer? There was now talk of writing the story into a book. The interruption came as one thought was saying, don't do this, another was saying, come on, go for it. So with some effort, I put away the negative ideas and placed on a, going forward, head. This encouraged me to share my tale. So I wrote the first chapter scanning my work as if it would come into public service. The job was harder than I expected. I was critical of my work. The story in my head was not coming together on paper. In my former life, I was a book editor in a major publishing house. However, editing a book and writing one was like the difference between plastering a wall and painting it. A million titles whizzed around my head. At the end of a tiresome night, I wrote the title, the manuscripts, printed it and fired the page on the table. I wondered what style of writing the men used. They did not move in academic circles. My original goal of identifying Frankie's father was lost in a frustrating quest to find the right words and the correct sentence. However, after some trial and error, we had our first meeting, to touch base and see where everyone was. It was a February morning. The aroma of the coffee hit me as the sound of the street fell into a sleepy hush with the closing door. The room was lit up by overhanging lights while the sun thumped the window like a Halloween banger. I can remember seeing Pitbull and Frankie sitting at a table. Frankie had a cap on his head. Pitbull had the sides of his head shaved, and he was wearing a goatee. Straight away we jumped into a conversation as to how we should write this book. As I listened, my mind drifted to a lovely place, and on reflection, I knew what I wanted more than anything else. I longed for warm fires and nights in, having a snack while watching my favorite soaps. Then to Facebook friends and a chat online, nothing more, that was it. The dream life wrapped in normality that borderlines boredom. The reward for being a member of the Joe Soap squad, thank you very much. My heart was not in it. I didn't want to write the book. I had lived in the fast lane. A lane of nothing but brokenness and a bullet flying past my head. I wondered why I was there. The men were talking, but I drifted from the conversation. I looked around the rectangular room. The walls were finished in crazy plaster with humps and bumps, the timber floor a dark brown. Nailed to the beams were apple boxes, sanded and varnished, acting as shelves. In them were old books, colorful mugs and rolled magazines, the type women loved. "Penny for them," Frankie said. "Sorry, Frankie." Frankie spoke like the perfect gentleman. I understood that I was the companion of individuals who were, once upon a time, thieves. Men who were associates of jailers, who together marched under the shadows of the gallows. Frankie picked up on what I was thinking. How he did that I don't know, maybe it was the look on my face. "Listen, love, the past is behind us. The ghost of Christmas past will not knock on your door." "Nor will he knock on mine," joked Pitbull. Frankie's history was interesting. It started in 1935, in New York, the place of his birth. He told us about the streets, prison, the horrid crimes, and a woman called Daisy May. That part of his story caught my interest. Later he talked more about the trials. Could I examine the transcripts from the courts, in that particular case? I said, cutting across him. "That's not a problem," he replied. "Okay then. Why do you want to see them?" inquired Pitbull. "I don't know you guys that well, and if I go with a hunch I'm having, you will ask me to write the book. If I agree, I need to distinguish that what I am writing is truth," Frankie interrupted. "Yes. Know the truth and the truth will set you free," gestured Pitbull. 2 coffees later, the meeting was over and I dashed across town in search of transcripts from the courts back in 1977. I felt like a woman from a film. The next emotion I felt was one of fear, then excitement. What I am saying is, I was all over the place. At least, I was in control. Yes, I was driving the roller coaster. What that meant was, I could at any moment pull the brake and get off, or could I? Now, getting court transcripts is a big problem. There's Section 48, Freedom of Information Act, and unless you've had direct contact with the case, there is no chance of obtaining a court order. So what was Frankie saying when he said that was not a problem?